what we're going to be covering today is getting your product's pricing right. And I've realized in creating this presentation, we actually might have to revisit this topic quite a bit, because I couldn't cover everything that I wanted to cover with you in this presentation today, because it's such a deep topic, right? So what I decided to do is give you a bit of a framework for understanding what pricing is, understanding how prices get set. And really what I want to say to you is prices are never set, they should be discovered. And it should be something that you're constantly working on. Bad news for you who, all of you who want to create one kind of pricing structure, right? And only, set it once and then forget it. It's not set and forget. You're going to evolve your pricing over time, I hope. And I want to give you a bit of a framework for how you can understand, like, how you can up the pricing and the prices that you charge, why that is fair to do so, and how to do it in a way that, most business coaches I've ever spoken with are just like, double your prices, get it done. I get it. I've never really been comfortable doing that, because it feels like I'm just sticking my finger in the air and seeing what I can get away with, which feels a bit icky to me. So I want to show you how we work with our customers when we're developing products, to say, you're going to start here, but this is how we're going to get you to a price point that's going to make you a very happy and healthy, sustainable business as well. Okay, cool. So how many of you operate a bit like this, right? You think, you have a product that you have created, you come up with some pricing models, but it really feels like that guess, right? You've stuck your finger in the air and you've gone, this is what I think we need to charge for this. This is what I think I can get away with. Does anyone recognize that feeling in here as well? Pippa, you've got your hand up. Yeah, Richard, look at this. Oh, everyone's very interactive today. Love it. I think most businesses start out in this way, and it's natural, right? And this is what I want to say to you is around the pricing is discovered, not set. There, unless you've got like a PhD in macroeconomics or something like that, I think pricing is something that we're all going to be discovering, rather than a mathematical formula of this is the price of this product and what it will always be. So guessing is okay, but one thing I don't want you doing is what I think most people's guesses are based on, is that they look at their competition and they say, well, for this product, competitor A is charging £10. For the exact same product, or with some differences, competitor B is charging 16, and then for some reason competitor C over there is getting away with charging £80, right? And that can be very confusing to us. And if we go back to that talk that we had a couple of weeks ago, think back to that cargo cult idea of everyone is just copying things, assuming that everyone else has done the deep work. I think pricing happens in this way in product like creation more often than you would think, right? I challenge founders that we work with a lot of the times on, like, why is your pricing that? And it basically boils down to, oh, our competitor charges this and we've decided to do this, right? Which is on this, you've all seen this mental model before, the better, faster, cheaper scale. They decide that the way to win business is to say, I'm going to go for that cheaper option right there on the left. If I look at their service, I copy their product, I copy their features, the functionality of whatever they're doing to deliver that result, and I just make mine slightly cheaper, surely I should then win business. And I think that's a really dangerous place for you to be as a business, a really dangerous place, because you end up in this world of like being on a treadmill that you can't stop, right? You have such low margins, it becomes this race to the bottom, in that you need more customers consistently or constantly. You can't really add in the points of service to your product that would enable you to get those customers a better result. And you can't build up the war chest in your bank account for you to be able to invest in all of the research and development to do great innovation to make your product better. I would much rather you guys focus on being better and faster rather than being cheaper, right? So I want your prices to rise. I want you to serve less customers. And I know a lot of you are going to be raising eyebrows at me because you're going to say, well, I'm creating something scalable. If you're building a software product, that's fine, but you can't serve everyone in the world. It's a really difficult thing to do, and even the biggest companies in the world do not do that. So I'd rather you be better and charge more. I'd rather you be faster and charge more than doing what most people do and try to price like a commodity, which is to say, raw elements. If you go and look those up on the marketplace, the profit margins on those are tiny, because essentially all they're doing is competing on price, and it goes down and down and down until the market finds its kind of equilibrium point. And that's what people get to charge for that. So this is the trap with just always pricing to be cheaper, right? You end up in this world of like, this is a picture of Sisyphus here for any of you who are into your mythology. This guy has to push a rock up a mountain for all of eternity, right? And as soon as he gets to the top of the mountain, it rolls back down again. He has to start again. Not a fun place for him to be at all. And if you are pricing in that race to the bottom, you are on the same journey as Sisyphus, in that you will never have enough customers to allow you to have a secure, safe, and profitable business. It will always feel very, very precarious, right? But that is where most people are operating. So I want to ask you a question actually here. What price is fair? Do any of you feel like there's an unfair price to charge? Have any of you seen anything that you think that is completely unfair in terms of the prices they're charging for that? Have you had that experience before, where you'd roll your eyes and never pay that price? No? Everyone's thinking, oh, never? Everyone thinks all pricing is fair? Okay, you've destroyed my next point, Pippa, which I love, but okay, we'll proceed on. I think you're right in terms of all pricing is inherently fair, because unless you've used force to make someone pay that price, they viewed it as fair and valuable when they signed up for it. And I hope no one in this group is kind of doing those dodgy boiler room tactics to close sales. I don't think any of you are, but if you are, please stop. That would be an unfair pricing structure. But for someone to make a purchase, for someone to buy your product or service, they inherently have to think that the price that you are charging for it is fair at the point of sale, and that's why they decided to buy it. In fact, they probably think it's a little unfair on your behalf, because they should feel like they're getting more value than they're paying for, and that's why the sale happens at all. This is a image here of a Magic the Gathering card that sold for $2 million, bought by a trading card shop, like a shop that deals in these things, right, off of someone who had it. There's one of these in existence. It's a special edition. The shop buys this for $2 million, and then they sell this card on to a private collector for an undisclosed amount of money. So I'm assuming that card then sold for more than 2 million. I think most of us would roll our eyes at this and say, like, how can a card be worth $2 million or more? But in the eyes of that customer, that price was fair because they perceived the value of that exchange to be worth it for, whatever number of reasons. And so if you're struggling to get people to pay the price that you're charging at this point in time, I would actually say that's probably because your customers in some way, shape, or form are not meeting you in terms of the valuation that you're putting onto your product. They're not thinking that the price that you are charging is a fair price, because they're not seeing the value there, right? That's the only reason sales don't really happen, because if you felt like you were going to get the value out of it, you would most likely buy that product. So let's dive into why your pricing sucks right now, right? Most of you are quite early stage businesses in this group. Most of you are still in this early discovery phase around what your product is, what it does, who it does that for. And so what we find when we work with those earlier stage businesses is that they're still operating in that I've just copied my competitor's pricing mindset, right? And they are just slightly cheaper. So if you are struggling to raise your prices, I can almost guarantee you one of the major reasons that you struggle to raise your prices is because your product is too broad, right? And if you've been in any business coaching circles whatsoever, the first advice that you get on your product, your service, is niche this down. But I want to be a bit more specific than this, because it's not that you have to niche down in terms of the person you serve. It's the outcome you provide. It's the value that your customer feels they're going to get out of your product. That's the thing that you should actually be niching. You should be delivering a more focused result. And the more focused your result gets, the more you will be naturally able to charge for that. Because the more focused you get, the more you're able to do this. The more you are able to cut out the amount of supply that you have of your product. So most of you right now, like, how many of you have a set number of customers that you will serve this year? Like, in your head, do any of you know how many customers you want this year? Pippa, you've got some? How many do you want to serve this year, Pippa?
12.
12? Have you got that on a post-it note somewhere? Madison's got 8. Cool. I think this is a really important thing for people to do, because we can operate by default in business where we just say, well, surely I would take on every single customer that comes my way. If they're willing to pay my price, I will take them all on. I've worked in businesses that have hundreds of thousands of customers. I can't tell you how stressful serving that many customers is. Like, that takes departments of people and insane processes where we're trying to keep up with the demand that puts on our services, trying to feed the amount of capacity we have to build to afford to service that many people, and the amount of support issues that we kind of get rises kind of exponentially. And actually, what we should be doing is saying, for my business, I want a set number of customers. Even if you're building a software product, your product should not be for everyone all at once, right? You should be raising your prices in that case to actually make it for less people so that you can do a better job. And this is why you want to limit the supply, because things that are in unlimited supply, naturally the market forces wipe out any profit margin in a product that has unlimited supply. The marketplace actually fights against you as a business owner in making a profit. It doesn't want it. And if you look at like things like airline seats, the profit margins for an airline business, I don't know why people run airline businesses, they make like 5% a year. It's tiny profit margins. And that's because the competition is so fierce, the supply of flights is so abundant, that as more and more flights are available, prices go down and down and down, because consumers have more and more choice. So you want to be limiting that supply, and you can limit that from just an artificial perspective of choosing a set amount of customers that you don't want to support more than, but you can limit it with raising price as well, by saying, actually, some people are not going to be able to afford that product. That's okay. You can limit it by having quite strict criteria of, getting into your product, like being like the exclusive. It's a bit of a cheesy analogy, right? But it's like being the cheesy nightclub example, right? Where nightclubs that just have an open door policy probably can't charge for you to get in there. Nightclubs that only let in a select few very special people will charge incredible amounts for you to enter that club. I was very surprised at the price tag for Ocean Beach in Ibiza when I went last year, where we had to spend £3,000 just to get into the place, right? That's the minimum spend there. One thing we're going to be doing in our business this year is I actually only want to work with 6 founders this year in our minimal viable launch product. And I only ever want up to 10 design subscription based clients, because handling more than that, quite frankly, I'm going to have to grow a business to do that to 50, 100 people. I've come to realize I don't want that at this point in my life, right? Employees stress me the hell out. Sorry, Jack, but they do. Right? They very much stress me out. So we are starting to communicate that with our clients, and a really strange thing's happening. when I say, and this has to be genuine, right? You can't just be like, oh, I'm only working with one client this year, but actually secretly in the back, you'll take anyone who comes in. That isn't going to work. As we've started to limit our supply, I can put out a very genuine message, say like, we've got room for one customer left this quarter. Book onto this conversation. Like if you want us to help you, you like our content, you like what we do, we're doing one more this quarter. Don't miss out. That's genuine. That will start to get traction. You are also then becoming very, I guess, centered in your sales conversations, because I know I don't need hundreds of customers. I just need to find 6 this year that we want to work with. And so I'm absolutely okay of saying no to working with people. Weird thing when you say no in sales conversation, it's called like trying to kill the engagement. You start trying to do that, suddenly people start, instead of you selling to them, they start selling themselves to you for acceptance and to get onto your product, which is a really weird place to be. When the first time you do that, where you try to say, actually, I'm not sure, like we're even like, I'm just having an exploratory conversation here. I'm not sure we will work together. If it's right, we'll move forward. The first time you do that, you'll start to see, because everyone wants to be liked and accepted, they will start to sell themselves to you, which is a great place to be for your profit margins and your pricing. Because if you have customers kind of banging down the door, but you're only letting 6 in, you can charge much more money for the 6 that you let in. And then the third reason, not the final reason, but the third reason I want to talk to you about today in terms of your pricing being compressed and not being able to raise that to the point that you would like, is this idea that this guy, Rory Sutherland, anyone who's into podcasts or, you know, learning about business, go watch Rory Sutherland on the Diary of a CEO podcast. This blew my mind, this podcast. I was running around my house with Post-it notes, slapping them on the walls everywhere with mind explosions that I was having. He talks about this idea of, you know, customers have a perceived value of your product. And if your pricing is compressed, it's because they are valuing what you're doing at a low level. And actually, the easiest way for you to up your pricing isn't to innovate in a technological manner. It's actually to add perceived value to your product or service. And I'm going to get into how you do that a little bit later. It's called a psychological moonshot. And honestly, like, I think it's one of the best things I've learned last year. Psychological moonshots rock. So we'll get into that. But first and foremost, I want to make you a series of offers here, just to illustrate the point around the perception of value, right? Because this is super important. So if I was to make you this offer, I'm going to give you £10. You owe me 100. Like, how many in this room are going to take that offer? No one. Good. No, we haven't. We don't have to make an intervention with any of you today. No one is going to make that offer, right? And if you are struggling to make sales, it's because, in a roundabout way, this is what you're offering your customers in their mind, right? You are offering them something lower in terms of the outcome they get than the price you're charging for it. And so they bounce away from those conversations like crazy. This is when you get the kind of objections, which is like, oh, can I just think about it? Not now, maybe in a few weeks. All of that kind of stuff is basically an indication of what you've offered me is going to cost me, in this case monetarily, but it can also be in a time cost or a risk cost as well. We're not going to get into that today, but something to think about, is because in their mind, what you're offering is not great value for money. So offer 2, if I was to give you £100 and you're going to give me £100 back, how many of you take that deal? To be nice, maybe. Do you know what? I was trying to come up with reasons for accepting this deal. The only one I could come up with is if I've got £100 of coins, like 1p, like, you know, little tiny coins, and I'm offering you £100 note, let's say, if that existed, and I might exchange that because it's more of a convenience. A lot of products, a lot of companies we work with are actually operating in this mode, right? they are offering £100 worth of value for £100. And sometimes people say yes to that, maybe because they think they're going to get slightly more value out of it. So sometimes people make that deal. If you are currently creating a product or have a product or service that is doing this kind of equal amount of money for equal amount of value, this is where you get people into your product or service. They stay for a bit, they don't really love it, they don't value it, it's okay, but they're not going to give you referrals. They're certainly not going to join your sales and marketing team for free and start telling all of their friends and family about how amazing your product and service is. It's just kind of meh, right? No one really cares. And this is what we would define as a product market fit problem, right? You've moved to the point where you can make sales, but you're not really delivering on the value and the promise within that. And then finally, if I was going to give you £100 and it's only going to cost you 10, how many of you take that deal? All of you. Come on, put your hands up. Otherwise, you're insane. So this is actually what you need to be doing in terms of your pricing, right? You need to be having so much value packed into your product, to your offer, to your service, and you need to be charging less for it, right? And this is your only job as an entrepreneur. And this boggles my mind, the amount of busy work that founders kind of get themselves involved with that isn't doing this, when this is your only job as an entrepreneur. Your job as an entrepreneur is to create something that someone in the world values and hopefully values highly. You create that, and your reward for creating something that's actually valuable is that you get to capture some of that back as profit. And it will only ever be a small percentage of the value you create. So if you want to raise your prices, you must be more valuable. And we've talked about ways to do that. You can make your product less broad and more specific in the outcome you get for people. You could then say, hey, I've got a very deep track record of delivering this, or hey, it's such a tailored product that you're not going to find anything else on the market that does the job as well as this does for you. This is why we're going to charge you a lot of money for it, right? So if you're struggling to raise your prices, if you're struggling to even get people to buy your service, the problem doesn't lie in the pricing structure. The problem lies in the perception of the value you're creating for your customer. Hands down. Like, if you are making sales, the market is screaming at you loud and clear that you haven't created something valuable yet. Go do the hard work to make something valuable. And this is the way, like, when I think about this, this is how I think about raising my prices. It's not just, hey, double your prices until you get free no's. Cool, fine. I just want to go and add more value into what we're doing so that the perception from our customers aligns with what I want to charge them, or is actually their perception of value actually exceeds what I want to charge them. My boy Rory's Psychological Moonshots, and I really, really, really want you to go and watch that Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, Rory Sutherland episode, because I just think it's one of the best pieces of content I've ever seen. Psychological Moonshots is this idea that it's easier to add perceived value from your customers than it is to add technological value into your product or service. And if we simplify that language down a little bit more, it's easier to do the small little things that your customers really love and value, and actually way cheaper and sometimes even free, than it is to pile the money and effort into making your product 10 times better, right? It's easier to make your customer feel and perceive your product to be 10 times better than it is to actually go and make it 10 times better. And the example he uses, I want to walk you through here, is this improving the Eurostar as a psychological moonshot, right? So let's imagine you are a entrepreneur that's been tasked by Eurostar to say, we want to make the journey from London to Paris 10 times better in every way, shape, and form, so that we can like double the ticket price and we can sustain that pricing and return a ton of value to our shareholders. And you've kind of got two options. You've got the technological moonshot here on the left, which might be, okay, I'm actually going to go further than making it twice as fast. Like, let's make the journey from London to Paris via train take 20 minutes, right? I think that would be kind of a scary train to be on, to be honest, with how fast that would have to move. But what would that cost in terms of your R&D budget for making a train be able to reliably go that fast? We are probably talking about billions, if not hundreds of billions of pounds of investment into making that happen. And all we kind of get is a bit of a faster train, but we've still got to get to the train. We've still got to check through our passport control, check our luggage on, get off the other side. Like, it's not really going to have that much of an effect on the experience of the product. So on the right-hand side, we have the ideas around a psychological moonshot. And I've just done 3 this morning very quickly here to illustrate this. But this is what I want you to take away from it, is that you can think about small acts of service, small acts of remarkable generosity for your customers that they will perceive highly in terms of the value, and it will enable you to raise your prices and sustain that. So what if instead of doubling or tripling or whatever the hell it would be to get that train to be 20 minutes, what if we included like world-class Michelin star level catering on the Eurostar, so that as you sit there for 2 hours, you get that meal, you have a really nice dining experience, and before you know it, the kind of train ride's basically passed anyway. You are a happy customer. Or how about we add screens into the back of everyone's seat where you can watch Disney, Netflix, any movie you want, you can play games, browse the internet, do whatever you want to do, so that the experience of sitting in that chair for 2 hours is entertainment rather than something that we're trying to escape from. Or how about, kids can be a nightmare on transport, right? When they're like, they don't want to be stuck in that thing for 2 hours, so they're screaming. How about like the kids, when they get to the front desk of the Eurostar, they get a free toy or a sticker book or something that they like keeps their interest, and that the parents now perceive as highly valuable because it's a nice thing they weren't expecting, and it ups their perceived value of the ticket price that they've paid, right? Any of you who are in or have been in service-based businesses will know that the small acts of remarkable kindness that you can add into what you do are massively valued by your customers. Those are the things that get customers to tell their friends and family about what you do and how good you are at doing it. And those things don't cost a lot of money, if any money, to do at all. And so, like, how do we focus this back onto a product perspective? And you're going to get so bored in this group of me saying this, but I really do think it like solves many problems. The better you understand the outcomes that your customers are wanting from you, the more easy it is for you to come up with these psychological moonshots that you can add that rapidly increase the perceived value of your product. I was thinking about Pippa, your branding, like photography branding service, right? There's so many things that as we're going through this product together, Pippa's like doing some brand strategy and photography for me. There's so many little things that you are doing that if I'd have known you were going to do on the front end of the product, rather than discovering it serendipitously as we've gone through the product, like my perception of value of what you've done would have been completely different. And I said this to you, right? I was like, I didn't realize you were going to be so meticulous in the planning and strategy behind these images that you're creating. But if I understood that, I value in a completely different category. There was a founder we were coaching the other day around, they'd created a restaurant booking system for local restaurants. They worked in restaurants all their life, and they realized like most restaurateurs hate the booking system that they've got, charges them loads of money. They'd created something new, and they couldn't work out why no one was moving from their product to adopt the thing that was cheaper and better, right? And we discovered that actually it was the perception of risk and value that was holding people back, because whilst they kind of hated their current booking system, why it was basically robbing them in broad daylight with the fees that they were paying, the perceived risk of changing their booking system meant that they didn't want to move. And so we said, well, why don't we do a psychological moonshot? How about you add a migration service into your sales pipeline where you say, look, to mitigate this risk, we're going to do the onboarding for you. We're not going to delete the old thing until we've done a thorough testing of this service. And we'll have a rollout plan that will give you ultimate confidence that this system is working and reliable before you switch the old one off. They did that, and suddenly people started switching onto their products, not because of any magical technological innovation we did. We just understood the problem, thought about a bit of a psychological moonshot, and upped the value of their service in the mind of their customers to get them over that hump, right? So I want you all to go on this journey of like, think about the psychological moonshot for your product or service, because this is where you're going to be able to find the things that allow you to double or triple your prices and have people happy and smiling when you say those prices to them, rather than falling off their chairs in shock, right? So the pricing challenge, I've got three things that I want you to focus on. If your product is broad, I want you to think about how you can make it more specific in the outcome it promises, more specific in who it targets, more specific in, maybe like the industry you're targeting or the vertical you're in. It doesn't really matter how you make it more specific, just make it more specific, right? If your product is for everyone, it's for no one. I want you to experiment, if you haven't already, with limiting the supply of your product, even if you're creating a software business. I don't want you to operate in a world where you're saying, I want to handle 10 million customers worldwide. I want you instead to think of, well, if we doubled our prices and had half the amount of customers, what would I add into our product or service that would get better results for people so that they stick around longer and ultimately they are more profitable over the lifetime of the relationship with that customer, right? So limit the supply. It will give you incredible pricing power because the market hates anything that is unlimited. It can't exist. It will drive the price down. And then I want you to spend some time thinking about your psychological moonshot, because I know, speaking with all of you in this group about your businesses, that you deeply understand painful problems that you are solving for people. But what I often find is gaps within your products or within your offering. Let's say the way you package that offering up, right? That you haven't thought about the things you could add in that cost you little to nothing to do, that massively ups the perceived value of your service, of your product. And if you did that, you would have more people who would be more willing to pay what you want to charge, because you would, mitigate the risk in their mindset, get them more excited to buy, make them feel appreciated and understood. Conversely, as they go through products and services that have a lot of these things baked into them, they're happier the entire time. And these are the things that you tell your friends and family about. When companies go above and beyond what was expected, that's how you get a good referral. That's how you get great word of mouth marketing, is that you become remarkable, right? Most people are wanting to get more referrals, but they're not wanting to do the work of becoming a remarkable business. It's not that hard if you understand psychological moonshots. It's really not that hard.